Okay, so here we are on day number 25, and as it stands right now, I'm about 95% sure that I'm done with this day. It's not a guarantee as of yet, but at least for now, I'm finishing with 100% accuracy on 4 trades with a net ROE of just over 7.25%. And surprise, surprise, I'm not all that happy with this result. Now, I did manage to capture a little bit of live video today on my second trade on APDN, which was my last one of the day. However, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to show it because there are quite a few things that I want to talk about today. And before I get into the trades, I want to go over a few of the things that happened leading up to today. So, over the weekend, I spent approximately 33 hours working on different videos, and one of them was the My Trading Setup video that I posted on Sunday, I believe. And that one in itself took about 25 hours, and most of that work took place on Sunday. It was a really long day where I spent probably 14 hours nonstop working on this video. And so my work over the weekend really made me come into Monday sick of making videos. And the effect that ended up happening is my discipline game yesterday on Monday was a lot better than it normally is. Even though I completed my entire pre-market checklist and I was feeling good yesterday, I decided against everything that showed up on the scanner and all the opportunities that I found, which there weren't that many of anyway. But the point is that I decided not to trade mainly because I just didn't feel like making a recap. I was sick of making videos and just that's the way I felt. And I think that if I hadn't had that sentiment, I probably would have finished red yesterday with a loss of about $120. So I thought that would be worth a mention to say that my non-red day yesterday was a bit of a fluke. You know, it's something that happens behind the scenes, and that's why I'm mentioning it now. And the other thing that I want to talk about is how my morning started this morning, because I woke up at 5:30 a.m. against my will following a very awful nightmare. Now, you may consider this a little bit off topic. I don't. I think it's entirely relevant until I get videos posted about my personality so you can get to know me and know whether or not you can relate to me. I will mention that I've been a pot smoker for, I guess, about 19 years, up until about 2, 3 years ago when I started trying to quit. I realized that it was in fact an addiction and that I had underappreciated how dependent I was on cannabis for all kinds of reasons. And as it stands right now, I haven't consumed any cannabis products in way more than long enough to be completely, flushed. And today, with that nightmare, I really felt one of the effects. One of the things that has always kept me going back to smoking has been the fact that smoking makes me forget my dreams immediately upon waking up. And today, I really felt the other side of that because it shook me pretty badly. That nightmare, I'm not going to get into what happened in the nightmare, but it's one that's been a recurring problem for the last 18 years based on a real event. And it kind of bothered me coming out of it. And I took about an hour this morning to listen to music. I played a little bit of guitar to try and recenter myself. And I do believe I did that. And so the value of this information, I'm not 100% sure of, but I do think it's important to include as many personal details and behind the scenes things as possible within these recaps. So as I give you an overview here of my trades today, they're all highlighted there at the bottom. I will point out that in between waking up and taking this first trade on AMRN, I did not eat. It was the only thing on my pre-market checklist which was not done by this time. Even though I had reset by this point and I had centered myself and done a pretty good job of it, I did not eat. And I do feel as though that may have had an impact on the way that I traded AMRN. Okay, so I just was like 70% complete talking about my trades and showing the charts and everything. And then I noticed the setup that I was waiting for, that 5% that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Remember I said I'm 95% sure I'm done the day? Well, the setup that I was waiting for was, it took place here. It happened. It set up exactly the way that I had hoped it would. And so I ended up taking a fifth trade, which added about $100 to my P&L. And has now made this the largest gainer in this account so far in all of the categories. So this is my updated day now. I'm still 100%, but the P&L is now 281.58 and my net ROE is just over 11%. And then on my trades log, which is also updated to right now, you can see that I've added that trade, and the gain was pretty substantial. And even though the position size was a lot lower because this was a high risk setup and my entry was less than ideal, I did still manage to book the biggest winner of the day in all categories as well. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I wasn't super happy with myself about this day. Even though I had scored 4 for 4, I felt like it was the sloppiest day that I've ever had 100% on 4 trades in at least 2019. And I'll get into the reasons for that. I'll at least go through them briefly, shortly. But what I wanted to see from myself in order to be happy with this day was proper execution, and I just nailed it on APDN on this 5th and final trade. I am 100% locked up now. I'm not going back. And you can see at present APDN is now halted to the downside, so it has reversed. And so now what I said at the beginning of the video about not being too happy with this day, that's pretty much been canceled. I think even though I did make some mistakes, I think overall today I'm pretty pleased with the result. However, the other effect of that is now I'm sick of making recaps, because I did just kind of go all the way through it and I was just about to make the outro, and now I kind of have to reset and re-explain this. So I'm probably going to be ripping through these a little bit quicker than I did the first time. So my apologies if you wanted some pretty good detail on at least my first trades. I just captured live video on my last trade, my most recent one that I just took. And I think what I'll do in this case is not show either of the live videos that I got on APDN as we resume here. I think instead what I'm going to do is release those as separate videos. So like I'll put the 2 halts together, my 2 last trades on APDN, I'll narrate them, and then I'll release it separately as a non-recap video. So the way my day started is probably the most important piece of this day, because I really overextended myself accidentally, which is becoming all too common of a problem. I'm flubbing hotkeys with way too high of a frequency, and this was a case that was pretty extreme. So what happened here, the setup I was looking at, I have fast forward the charts, I'll back it up just so you can see. It was following consolidation on this huge push on AMRN. I wanted to see a breakthrough of 1975, and what I later decided was that I'm going to wait for 20 because I saw a lot of sellers stacked up at 20, and the entry I took, as you can see on this candle here, was exactly at 20. There was a 100,000 share order or so sitting on the ask, and I punched the buy key on probably like the last 2,000 shares, and yet 20 did not break. And the problem with this is that on the way up, I was trying to decide what's my initial entry. At first, I was thinking 125, but because my profit target was a little bit closer than usual and not as great on the profit loss situation, I decided, no, let's take 250 so that if it doesn't work out, I can still, get a pretty good exit and make decent profit if this thing doesn't run to where I want it to. And unfortunately, I ended up, I moved my fingers over on the upper keys there on the numbers, and instead of hitting the 250, I hit the 500. And so all of a sudden, my starting position was maxed out buying power at $10,000. And, I realized it right away. And of course, whenever you do weird stuff, the market will punish you. And you can see on the very next candle, we dropped all the way back down. And this was a very quick flush too. It popped above 20 and then just ripped all the way down to 1960. And as soon as this happened, I realized what happened. And the first statement that I spoke to myself was, don't panic, deal with it. And because I was able to control my emotions within this moment, I just recalculated the risk, recalculated everything, and decided that I was going to hold down to my hard stop at 1950. And thankfully, this drop down never got there. We did pop back up, and for a second, it looked like it was going to resolve. Now, long story short, you can see I exited a little bit, half the position here at 2011, and then the rest of it I got out in the 2023 was where I got out of the rest. So all in all in this trade, I only captured 17 cents, and I was risking 50 to do that. So no doubt this is a very horrible way to start the day, and I was pretty shaken by this. And throughout this trade as well, because of the price action, because of what I was seeing, my attitude flipped from long to short. I decided, nope, this thing is going to fade. And as I saw the volume steadily descending, my attitude really flipped short. And that's a big part of the reason why I didn't give myself the chance to top tick this at 2045, even though this ended up being like a bummer of a move. I didn't even give myself the chance. I thought that the max price I was going to get was 2025, and that's when my attitude flipped short. Now, I won't talk too extensively about my strategy on the short trade. I'll just point out, first of all, the entry was 50 shares at 2020, and I ended up covering a little bit later, if I fast forward, actually quite a bit later, 20 minutes or so, down here. Two interesting things happened on this trade. Number one was that I put out probably 20 or 25 orders throughout this trade, both stops and both limit orders, and also stop short orders to add more. And at some point, I forget exactly where it was in this trade, but I eventually realized, you idiot, it's pre-market right now. Stop orders do not work. And that's when I really realized, like, wow, I need to eat. Like, I need to feed my brain. I've been up for 3 hours, and look at this stupid failure that I just, I started with taking 500 shares accidentally, and now I can't add. First of all, this turned out to be a restricted short, like not SSR restricted short, but in that I can only use 40% of my equity to short it. And so I wasn't able to add, even though I did get a good starter here. I wanted to add below 20, below 75, and then below 50, and I never got any of those chances. And obviously, you can see with the difference in my share size here, I mean, I only took 50 shares at entry. I was risking like $18 on this thing, and because I was so shaken from my first trade going long on it. And so right after this pop-up, I had reset my stop to $20 by this point. 20.01 is where I had it. And that's when I realized, oh yeah, you idiot, there's no such thing as stop orders pre-market. And so once it started coming back down, I started having second thoughts about holding all the way down to my target, which was around 1925. And I thought, maybe just ignore this and close the trade and take the $15 or whatever and just go eat and reset and, get centered again, because this is not a good start to the day. And by this point, there were quite a few interesting things on my watch list, including SNCR, SLDP, which was a possible bottom bounce, and then APDN, which had positive news, plus it was a recent reverse split and a micro float. So I ended up deciding to just cover this. Once I saw it basing out at 85, I said, you know what, screw it. And I just cut it loose, canceled the whole idea, and went to go eat. And then, of course, as soon as I exit, it feels like this always happens to me. As soon as I exit the trade, it resolves past the support. There was support here at 75, and then the moment that I exited, like 90 seconds later, we get this huge high volume long body going down. But anyway, that's enough about that. Now, before I get started analyzing all my trades on APDN, which is going to be fairly brief, I really want to point out something that I learned today, something that I realized about the progress in this account and the trouble that I've had on a lot of these fast-moving, low-float, halt resumption type plays, is that my trades today were a reflection of a pattern that's been developing in this account, which is I'm getting hurt very badly by the fact that this is a simulator. And I realized today, after butchering my first trade on APDN, I realized that if this were a live account, I would have killed it today. And on trades like CNST, I probably would have killed it as well. And I feel like a lot of profit is being lost by the fact that I'm trading a simulator, because the fills that I'm getting are not realistic. And in fact, they're a lot worse than I would be getting in a live account. In a live account, with the way that I have my hotkeys set up, I would be able to get out before everybody else. When I go to sell on the ask, I'm not actually selling on the ask. As I've shown before, I kind of undercut the ask a little bit so that I get filled before everybody else does. And in practice, in the past, I've seen this happen time and time again, that I do get filled before everybody else, and this gives me really good exits. Especially when the spreads are big, as they were on APDN today, where, in the first part of the day when the stock was at $7, we were still seeing 80-cent spreads, which is crazy. I mean, 10% spreads on any stock is really big. And so in my defense, I will say that a lot of my frustration today like I pointed out at the beginning of the video where I said, I'm not too happy, a lot of that was due to my trades on APDN, which in turn was due to an unrealistic lack of fills. So after sitting out the bell, I went for a smoke at about 9:28, and I didn't come back until 9:34. And the reason for that was because I didn't want to get chopped up by the trades that sometimes hurt me right at the open, especially given all my screw ups on AMRN. And so I took a preemptive entry here. It was one that was of anticipation of the high of day. And you can see I actually top ticked the entry, which sucks. Right here, the top of the candle is 703, and that's where I took my first entry of 125 shares. And my stop on this was 641 for the early part of the trade. And there was a bit of sideways consolidation with descending volume, which really started to worry me. I thought, damn, we really need a volume spike for this thing to really have a chance. And we did get it, and that's when I added, bringing my average up to 713 and change. And you can see by my exits, the first one here, the second one here, I wasn't all that patient. I was, at this point, I was getting frustrated by the non-fills that I was receiving on these pops. I kept trying to get out, in the, I think it was like 760s and 770s. And the exits I ended up getting, as you can see here, 735 and 750, were really not that great. And so when I re-entered this as it moved into a halt at 8:19, I took another entry here. I re-entered it at 8:24, which was very much a revenge trade. This is part of the reason. This is the one that made me kind of end the day, because I took the revenge entry going into the halt with no profit cushion whatsoever on that trade. And as I've said multiple times in the past, when I like to get involved in these, big mover halt resumption plays, I really like to go in with a profit cushion. And I had tried back here to start that profit cushion, but because I got annoyed and I took early exits, I wasn't holding this position anymore. I closed the position here, and then I re-entered it like less than a minute later. Only 45 seconds later or so, as it halted. And the halt resumption was pretty choppy. You can see the doji that formed, and once again I had trouble getting filled. We spiked up to 889. I didn't like the price action that I was seeing. It did crash down all the way back down to 8, and even though it did hold, I really didn't like what I saw on the tape. I didn't like the fact that the spreads were opening up to 50 cents a share, and I thought, you know what, let's just get the best exit we can and take a step back and go for a breather, go for a smoke, reevaluate what I'm going to do with this day going forward. And so that's what I did on this candle. I saw the signs of a possible reversal, which I ended up being right on, kind of. And I got a pretty good fill on the exit at 864, which I was okay with. But in between this exit and this candle here, like in this period right here, that's when I went outside and I had a little powwow with myself to decide how I should do this going forward. And the answer I came up with was I need to take a substantial break, because I looked back at my trades of the day and I was like, man, there isn't one trade on this list of 4 trades, even though I'm 100%, like they were all sketchy. Every one of them had something wrong with them. And I thought to myself, APDN has a lot of potential going forward, but if I'm having all this fill trouble, like how am I going to be able to capitalize on it? And so what I decided was I think I need to wait for a substantial reversal, and I need to see that reversal bounce back up. And so if we look down on the 5-minute chart, which I will extend, after this huge rise up, which I completely missed due to being locked because of all the mistakes I missed this whole rise up. And then we started getting the reversal where we halted down here at whatever time it was, and then moved up a little bit and then halted down again. And after the second halt, I noticed a pretty strong pop back up. And there was some consolidation, some uncertainty, topping tails, bottoming tails. And then we ripped up again all the way up to almost high of day. And once I saw this flush down get bought up so quickly and so aggressively, that's when I decided to get involved with my last trade, which once again I bought going into the halt. This 1480 entry of 50 shares, that was buying right before the halt when I saw that, okay, we're stacking up here. It looks like it's definitely going to halt. And so I kind of gambled a little bit on a high risk entry because my stop was down at $14. But when I say that my stop was at $14, I'm talking about my hard stop. I'm talking about the maximum risk that I was willing to take. That doesn't necessarily mean that I would have waited for it. A lot of the time, if I see that the price action is weak coming out of the halt, then I'll just bail out early to taper the risk on the losing trade, so that when I do add going up later on a winning trade, my risk reward ratios are amazing. And in this case, I don't think I was ever down more than $1 on this trade. My exit at 1480 was off a bid price of 1479. And if I cursor over the candle of resumption, you'll see that the low is indeed 1479. And we just squeezed up from there. I saw bid support at in the low 15s. There was a bidder that popped up at 1530, which tightened the spread up. And I immediately read that as something that was going to trigger a buying wave. And I turned out to be thoroughly right on this one. And you can see my exits were pretty strong too at the top of the candles. And originally my end of the line target was 1760 or just below, most likely 1750, which was based off daily resistance here at 1760. But at the same time, I was going to be ready to take profits earlier if, I saw a little bit of sketchiness in the tape. I certainly wanted to be pretty quick to take, at least for the first half. I would have, held the flyer if things look super strong. But I saw a couple things I didn't like, and I won't get into this right now. I'll cover all that stuff in the live video, which I'll release separately. So if you're interested in seeing my last two trades here, these two right here on APDN, I will be releasing those on the channel in what's going to be the newly formed live trade playlist. So you'll be able to see those, and I will narrate over them. So I'm not going to get into them now. But to recap the day, I'd say that this final trade on APDN was superior to my entire day before it. And, I was frustrated going into it. And like I said, even though there were some things working against me, the fact that this is a simulator and it's costing me unrealistic exits, and despite the disadvantages that those fill problems caused me, and the fact that this is a simulator, despite the issues that that's causing me, I still ended up landing a very good trade on this. And, I listed my max risk at $14. Like I said, I probably would have stopped out earlier if the price action was weak. But in practice, the way that this trade unfolded was that I was never down more than a couple of dollars on this, and I ended up getting close to 100. So I'm really happy with the risk reward, the actual risk reward that I got, as opposed to the maximum risk reward. And this trade really boosted the overall sentiment that I have towards this day. So finally, that is it for me today. I'm not going to be taking any surprise trades and remaking this goddamn thing again. So as a closing note, I just want to go over my trade log right here, my 5 trades from today, and just point out the ascending pattern in the ROI. I feel like my trades got less and less sketchy as the day went on, and I do feel that that's accurately reflected by the ROI listings here. You can see bottoming in that first one at 0.8% and then topping at 8.65. And that first position, I mean, this was a $10,000 position. It maxed out my buying power. And then meanwhile, on this one, on this 75 share position, well, I didn't fill it out yet, hold on. It's only $1,000. And I managed to squeeze a good winner out of it. So I feel like even though this day did start very badly, I made up for it and I corrected a lot of the mistakes. I'm happy with the fact that I took breaks frequently and calm myself down to evaluate what I was doing and what could be fixed, what couldn't be fixed, what I should do going forward. So going into tomorrow so far, I do feel really good. And with the run today on APDN, which is not necessarily finished yet, I feel like there's a really high probability that we will see some really big low float moves in the coming days. So my goal going forward from today is to remain as patient as possible early in the day and look to snipe that good entry on whatever fills the most criteria, the one that really, has home run potential. That's the one I really want to wait for. And thankfully, thanks to today, having to make this twice, I am sick of making videos again today. So hopefully that'll make me more patient to tomorrow. So until next time, everybody, this is Alex saying happy trading.